Welcome to Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness with your hosts Chris Noble and Bill Peratzman. In this episode, you will learn about the details of binaural beats, hear live samples of the 5 main kinds of binaural beats, and experience a spontaneous, musical, guided box breath exercise with binaural beats in the background. It's our New Year's gift to you. We'll be talking about all that and much, much more, as always in these open conversations, here on Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness. Chris.
Bill.
Bueno, man, you're down in Mexico having the grand old tour.
Yes, Feliz Navidad. Merry Christmas from Mexico. I'll be spending my Christmas down here. And it's my first ever time doing Christmas abroad and in a hot climate, and I gotta say it's pretty awesome and hilarious when I'm sweating buckets. I have to take 3 showers a day, and yet people at the grocery store are wearing Christmas hats. It's a really funny scene, I gotta say.
It's totally different because you're like a northern boy, right?
I'm Canadian.
Toronto, yeah, I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, hey, from the far north.
From the far north, eh?
There you go. Right. Do you speak Spanish? Are you getting along okay with language?
No hablo español, but I'm trying, buenos días, buenas noches, dos cerveza, por favor. The important,
exactly.
The important things.
The really important things.
Yeah.
I can't wait to check in on your ancient history sort of podcast as you're going along with that. It's on YouTube. I'll post it because there's such cool stuff that, well, I don't want to, I'm not going to give anything away, but if you're listening to this for the first time, Chris is an interesting kind of, what would you say, archaeologist, anthropologist?
Well, amateur in all those areas, and but like amateur from the French word of love, like lover. I'm a lover of these subjects, and I'm certainly not a traditionally qualified person to talk on it, but I've been researching alternative history for close to a decade now, and it just absolutely fascinates me, like the coolest sci-fi film I've ever seen unravel. And my channel is just here to show what other scientists and other researchers are saying about our ancient past and how we can integrate that wisdom into the present, much like how we've been doing this with breath work, with binaural beats, with meditation and music and sound healing. This is all ancient information, ancient stuff that these pretty fantastic humans and whatever else was existing back then, we're all very aware of. So it's actually affected my music a lot. This research, it's affected my music and sound healing as well. So, and just quickly, yesterday when I was just at Chichen Itza yesterday, and the acoustics of this area and this temple in particular were mind-blowing. And it once again an example of how these ancients used acoustics. And we're going to talk about binaural beats and stuff today. And it's really on point because I was getting these really cool 360-degree echoes and rotations at certain points in this complex yesterday that were blowing my mind. They felt like binaural beats in a way. It was special, really cool stuff.
There's such cool science on this, and I'll link into it so we don't have to cover everything on it. But I love sound in space. The spatial nature of sound is really cool. And of course, you can only get that if you're wearing headphones, listening to something. But there's actual recording engineering out there that's producing that 3D effect of sound right now. What is it called? An Apple 4D sound or something like that?
Yeah, there's also like you can go all the way up to 8D sound, which I was learning about, which uses a technique that audio engineers would call binaural panning. And you can do this in your DAW, in your editing software, if it's a professional audio editing software. So I use Logic Pro. You could probably do this, I'm sure, with Pro Tools. I don't know if GarageBand, but maybe GarageBand can. It's a free software for Apple. For those of you listening, great software for starting off, and great software for professionals that just want an easy way to kind of cut up and edit audio. But binaural panning uses that 360-degree sense, so you can pan. And when I say pan, for those of you who don't know that term, it means you're putting the audio signal into one ear or the other, but also it's a position of reference. So for example, with binaural panning, so regular panning is left and right. So it just sounds like
it's like a straight line, right?
A straight line. So either a sound is 100% in your left ear or 100% in your right ear, or a variation on that. So it's like 30% in your right, 70% in your left, whatever. Binaural panning makes it sound like something's behind you, above you, in front of you, left, right. So you've got, almost think of it like a dome, like
Yeah.
like that you get to use this three-dimensional 360-degree space where something can sound like it's below, above, behind, and front. And that's what engineers would try to do to replicate what I was experiencing at places like Chichen Itza, for example.
I understand that it's done with the same kind of thing, same kind of technique that makes a binaural beat work. And if you're listening to binaural beats, you're familiar with them, you might notice that there's the kind of beat that sort of moves from one ear to the other slowly. And then there's the kind where you can hear both ears at the same time. And there's a kind where it just kind of explodes and goes everywhere. And all of those are, I'm going to use a word that I'm not sure is correct here, but it's like a phase thing, right, Chris, where you've got one frequency, say 100 hertz is coming in your left ear and 110 hertz is coming in your right ear. And that slight out of phaseness creates the motion. And we would call that in a binaural beat sense, we would call that 10 hertz difference the frequency of the binaural beat. You can't hear it as a frequency, but you can measure it as that slight out of phase between the left and right ear. And that's what creates this binaural beat, this space, this sort of, it's like a dead zone happening 10 times a second.
It's like an interference pattern.
An interference pattern, yeah, there's a
Really,
sophisticated term.
well, that's what I like. That's how I kind of liken it. So if you're in phase, for those of you listening, that means you're in one ear is playing the same frequency as the other. So they're exactly the same. The second you switch even by a fraction or decimal point, that frequency in one ear, all of a sudden it's going to go from like a standard tone to a
Yeah,
like that kind of an effect. So that's what we would say out of phase or interference pattern. It's the same kind of idea, but that undulation or that interference, that out of phase sort of effect is what creates these different frequencies that we would then go into the brainwave frequencies of binaural, delta, theta, beta, alpha, gamma. And these are just different degrees in which is it going to be a slow wah 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 sound, which would be way down in like the delta range or theta, or is it going to be up in like the gamma, which would be like really really fast
really
vibration,
fast.
right? So we've got this kind of range, and it can be audible because you can move the frequency spectrum up into a range that we could hear, like like something in that spectrum right there. You can
Yeah,
you can have your frequencies start there, and then all you do is you create that interference pattern again. You've got like nah one note here and nah, like slightly different
just off
note in the
by,
right,
and we're
right? But
not
it's in
talking
a
about a lot of, we're not talking about a big variation. It ranges between like 1 hertz and 40 hertz. So between 1 time a second and 40 times a second is all it takes to make these binaural beats work. I learned about this when I was watching piano tuners tune the piano as a kid, right? And the piano, if you haven't looked at one, inside they've like 3 strings are there for some of the notes and 2 strings are there for others and one. But the 3 string notes, the tuner tunes them by eliminating the beats between the strings. So you get the pitch pretty close, and then the tuner listens, and if there's like then he knows he's or she knows that they have to adjust the string until it is a constant sound, so that you don't have that beat. And you do that for all of those 3 of the strings, and you're in tune. So you start by tuning like the single strings, and then you bring the multi strings in and eliminate the beats, and you're in tune. And it's fascinating. Among other things, there's a whole bunch more in tuning a piano that I don't understand. But that beats thing was part of like, oh yeah, so when it came up as binaural beats, and I was reminded of this is a cool one. Chris, I was reminded of this by a homeless friend. I was
okay.
teaching this homeless music class, and this guy came in asking me about binauros. 2 ears, binaural beats. And I love that because that's exactly what it is. It takes 2 ears to be able to detect one of these. And this guy is sort of schizoaffective, and he would back in the day on a tower computer stack up multiple YouTube binaural beats. Like he'd have examples of all of them going at once, right? And it was helpful to him because it sort of like lowered his brainwave state to a place where he was, quote, more normal. And he'd figured out how to do this like on his own, right? With his binaural beat. And it's fascinating how this stuff just permeates our culture all the time.
When we hear it in nature as well, I've
Oh yeah,
had
like crickets,
experiences where crickets or wind,
wind.
sometimes there's a gust of wind, and depending on this position that I'm sitting in or standing in, I can hear this like weird vibrational effect where the wind's like shifting and maybe there's another current coming in and it's once again creating an interference pattern of some kind. And then it's got this weird, or sometimes you're driving in your car in the highway, and I lowered my window just a little bit, and for some reason the current of air coming in starts to create this like whoop, 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 sort of
Yeah.
weird binaural. And if I lower the window down all the way, it all comes in and it's gone. Like the interference pattern isn't there anymore. But if I just open it a little crack, it creates a weird. I've noticed this like kind of binaural again. So you can really experience these well outside of the musical laboratories that we've got here. Nature creates them all the time. And I think that's why nature is so soothing in many ways, but that's one of them, is that it's always creating these little mini binaurals whether you're aware of it or not.
So the idea here is to be able to change your brainwave state from a higher vibrational frequency to a lower vibrational frequency. And these, we're talking about these as if they're things we could hear.
Or
40
vice
hertz.
versa.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right. You can hear 40 hertz, but there's a range where binaural beats go on the low side when they get down into like theta and delta, where we don't have the ability to hear them, but we can still sense them, which is kind of cool. And all you have to do, for example, get a low frequency delta beat is to have something where the two sounds you're listening to are out of phase, or the interference pattern is below what, 4 hertz, 4 times a
Correct.
second.
Yeah.
So we can't actually hear anything at 4 hertz, but we can sense the 4 hertz uh, interference pattern. I want to say something that resonates, or like vibration.
Yep.
It's funky to talk about this because the words mean so many different things in context depending upon who you're talking to. If you're talking to an engineer, it's one thing. If you're talking to my homeless friend, it's another. But the idea is that even though you can't actually perceive these things audibly, they're still there and they're still happening to you. So by way of example, right? So let's play a few of these and just allow people to get synced up with. If you're using headphones, it's great. You will be able to notice them in headphones. But if you're not using headphones because you don't have the left-right separation, they'll all sound the same to you. Now, having said that, the ones we're using are from Bonsai Labs, the Brainwave app. We'll link it in the show notes. And these are all played over the same pitch. So just a note about pitch and frequency. So the pitch that they're using happens to be around a B. If you're on the piano, it's a B1, B2, but it's the note B. It may vary. There's one that's in C, but it doesn't matter. The note, the pitch, is not what you're listening for. You're listening for the difference between what your left ear hears and your right ear hears. And if you, with practice, right, you get to know these things. Like Chris, you can pick them up just in nature now, right? But you've been working on this for a while.
Of course. And those listening, like what you're really looking for and listening for is that, like I've been describing earlier, is just that whoa, 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 whatever
Yeah,
frequency of cycles of time we're talking about slow. And I think we'll start off here slow. So keep an ear open for that. And it really, this really needs to be listened to with headphones because you're not going to hear that difference without it. But if you don't have the ability to do that right now, you're still going to receive effects from binaural beats regardless. They're just not going to be the same as with listening with headphones. But I think it's still an interesting exercise. So whether you have headphones or not, let's take a listen to some stuff. But I really do recommend throwing in some earbuds or some over the ear headphones if you can.
absolutely. So get Bonsai Labs. I'm using the Dream Inducer uh, module of Bonsai Labs, Brainwave. And let's start out with, let's go high to low. We'll start out with gamma here. So here's a gamma. Sounds like a buzz.
Gamma's a quick one. So it's going to be a much faster interference pattern. You hear that, everyone?
Tough to pick up, but it's there. It's there, right? And
And the cool thing too, for those of you listening, is that if you can't quite pick it up, it doesn't mean the effects are not happening. And that's the coolest thing about binaurals, is you might not even be like, oh, I don't really notice the difference here, Chris and Bill, like what's going on? Well, just throw them on and do an activity, or have a purpose for them. So for example, align the binaural beat to what you need. So let's say you want to do some work, you want to be productive. Try listening to an alpha or perhaps a beta wave frequency spectrum, and just put that on the background, and then go work for an hour, and then come back and let us know, how that went, because I guarantee
yeah.
you those effects of concentration are going to be heightened, whether you're aware of it or not. So that's the cool thing about these.
So high to low now. You mentioned beta. It's for those listening. We're going to proceed from about a 40 hertz interference pattern down to about a 4 hertz interference pattern. And as you get familiar with these, you'll start to line up the names with them. But that was gamma. So let's look at beta. And it'd be really great, for you to be able to hear these back to back. We're putting some separation in them now so you can sort of grok what's going on. But grab the app and you can do it, on your own. And let's see here. So here's beta. Same pitch. The vibration is a little bit slower. I'll try to make a quick cut here now to alpha. Alpha is kind of where we spend most of our brain state, right? More or less. It's like between, I don't know,
And
13.
it's a waking state, you know.
7 to 13 is what I'll link this page into so people can see the reference page that we're talking about. But I'll make a quick cut. Apologies for the clicks when you're listening. It won't be a loud one, but it'll be a click, and then we'll go right into alpha.
Do you hear that, everyone? Then
As they get slower, I think they're easier to pick up, Chris. Let's move it down now to theta. This is where I get it a little more obviously. So theta, what would you use theta for? Relaxation?
it is great for relaxation, for meditation. It's, for those of you listening, theta is really good for meditation. It's basically, you could even be sleeping with theta. This is a deep, deep state of consciousness. This is quite a relaxed state. You could even be asleep, or you might be kind of in a waking. This is the state of consciousness right as you wake up in the morning. You might still be kind of groggy, still a little bit in that sleep state. That's where theta is. Very, very deep relaxation. But wakefulness, still a little alert-ish.
Let's take it down to the last level, the lowest level of delta.
Feels like we're in hypnotherapy, going down the ladder into your subconscious.
Yeah, right. Please don't drive and listen to this podcast with headphones.
Yes, definitely this one.
So I can actually get that wah, 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 wah. And you notice the pitch has been the same on all of the actual note that's being used is the same, but it's the interference pattern in that note that's gone from a wide interference pattern now down to a pretty narrow interference pattern to get to this delta wave.
You can really experiment with that, everyone. If you couldn't hear much of a difference there, get this app and take a listen, or for free, go on YouTube and just YouTube these different binaural beats and just take a listen if you're curious. I think it's really it's a fun rabbit hole to go down, and the benefits are infinite, and it's something that you can really start to. I like to call this, well, binaural beats are specific, but when I use binaural beats in my music for different purposes, sleep, studying, whatever, I call it functional music, because the binaurals, among other things, tuning and the intention behind the piece, but the binaurals especially give it that functionality where I need to concentrate for the next 2 hours. I'm trying to bang out a bunch of work, whatever that might be, admin stuff, whatever. And I'll throw on that alpha wave binaural beat or a piece of music because I don't like just listening to a straight up binaural beat for 2 hours. That can really start to give me a headache pretty quickly. But when they're at a lower volume encompassed in a piece of music, all of a sudden I can listen to that for hours. And when I do that, again, go on YouTube, check it out. You can check out my channel or other people's channels. There's so much stuff out there. Type in the function that you want. So sleep music, study music, working music, um, music for migraines. Believe it or not, I mean, we can get very specific.
Yeah.
When I was sick, there's music for your immune system that help boost your immune system. I mean, if there is anything going on, you can find music for it, and that's that functionality that binaural beats help bring to this kind of music, where it's there's such a direct function for the particular frequency of brainwave that we're dealing with. And that's what I love about it. I find it so cool that we're now bringing music outside of just pure entertainment into the therapeutic and functional, not just even therapeutic, but functional. Like
Yeah, actually
I don't
functional.
need, I'm not sick. I just need to concentrate at work. Okay, here you go. Listen to these alpha waves.
There's a beautiful thing about the Brainwave app in that you can start a binaural on Brainwave, and it'll let you add ambience if you want to do that, like nature sounds, which is fine. You can adjust the volume of both of them so you can mix your own, thing there. But you can also run your own music player on top of Brainwave and play music that you want to listen to instead of music that somebody told you is for this, right?
That's
And
awesome.
and I'm thinking back to my schizophrenic homeless buddy, because one of the things that's typical of him is that he doesn't like all of the music that goes with these binaurals that you can find on YouTube. It's not his thing, right? His thing is metal and beyond. And
That's
so
awesome.
he layers metal on top of the binauros, as he calls them, and it really works for him, right? Because he's completely engaged in music that he loves with the undercurrent of the binaural beat doing the heavy lifting, right? Changing his brain state. And that's beautiful, man, because, we all have different tastes in music. And having said that, I'm going to plug this one more time, Chris, because I am so profoundly moved by Chris's 40 hertz of, it's actually memory music. They found that the 40 hertz, the actual pitch, 40 hertz, which is an E, I think,
Yeah,
one,
low E or D or something. I can't
it's
remember.
down, it's low, right? You can
Yeah,
hear it.
you can.
But this has an amazing effect for memory care, right? It really helps to stimulate the brain's memory functions. When I use that music, which also has binaurals behind it, right? I
Yep,
I was like in this beautiful dream state for the whole time. It was just the most peaceful moment, and it was a 2-hour moment of time that I'd had. So it's important. Having said that, it's the music I loved. I love the effect of the binaurals that were going behind it. Um, when you combine those two things, wow, magic happens, right? If the
agreed.
music isn't working for you, find your own music, right? Because we can do that now,
Yep. Like,
right?
well, I write my music because it's something that I want to listen to.
Yeah,
Right. So I'm writing what I like, which is, sometimes more piano based, maybe with some violin or strings and some soft synths or atmosphere, a lot of nature sounds I like to infuse in there. That's my jam. That's my preference. Some people like metal, as you just explained, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's so specific. And the more like what I love about what Bill does with his clients too is you narrow in like what is your unique
yeah.
individual specific set of songs and music that bring you that peace and that joy and that everything that you're looking for, because it's really the prescription of that song, prescribing that song to the individual. So for those of you listening, that's what you need to also honor with yourself, is you could be on these things and really like a lot of the meditation music. I usually do. It's actually depending on the type of song and stuff, like I usually do gravitate towards it. It's nice, it's soothing, I enjoy it. Great, done. Especially if there's like a hang drum and stuff like that. Like I love certain percussion that they use in some of these traditional meditation pieces. I like that. Not everyone does. I know my dad, for example, not a big fan of that stuff. So if it was fused maybe with some acoustic guitar or something a little different, he might gravitate towards that more. Or once again, as Bill was mentioning, heavy metal. It doesn't matter. And so it's really cool that the Brainwave app, you can have other music that you can choose and still have the binaurals. That's really cool. I like that.
It's like mixing a TikTok or an Instagram reel, and people know how to do that now. So the brainwave is right there, and you can literally mix your own music, and for any purpose that you want. what do you think? What should we do today? Do you want to, because we want to lead you all through a process here of combining, you're going to love this, combining the binaural with some music, which I can play just like right off. It's not hard to play this kind of music, with a breath work that Chris is going to guide us through. What do you think you'd want to use for this in terms of binaural frequency?
Let's give people something in the middle here. So it won't put you to sleep, but we're not going to do like Wim Hof. Wim Hof is traditionally, I forget the more ancient Vedic terms because it's not his method. It's an old method, but it's a very intense breathing, and you can get really, really high really, really quickly off that one. I'm thinking we could do something called box breathing, which is a nice in between. You inhale for a count of, we can say, let's say today, 5, a count of 5, and then hold for 5, release for 5, hold that release for 5, and inhale again. So if you can imagine the box, right? One side of the box is the inhale, the other side is the hold, the other side is the exhale, and the last side, the bottom side, is the hold at the end, the exhale.
So I've got a question for you, because 5 comes up in breathing a lot. And in our culture anyway, we don't have a whole lot of music that we grok in 5. So why do you think 5 rather than say 4?
Well, my intuition on that one just right now is that 4 just felt a little too short, and I've done that. So 5 is just a little bit longer, and even though it's only in 1 second, it makes a difference. Every little increment of time makes a difference. But yeah, when do we listen to like 5/4 music, especially when it comes to meditation stuff? Not too often, but depending on the right composer, you can make 5/4 sound really, really easy on the ears.
Yeah.
and not bizarre at all. Actually, it feels quite rhythmic and a pulse that you can easily get on with. So I actually don't know, Bill. That's a good question, though.
I'm thinking now because I pulled up this beat, which is 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, it's a little funky to count it because most of the rhythms that come, built into a synthesizer are 4, 4, or 3, 4.
Oh, we could do 4/4 to keep it simple too. I really don't mind.
Slow enough to be.
So we have a more steady pulse. Is that possible? Like a 4 on the floor kind of kick almost, or something. I think for what I've encountered with breathwork, and for those listening, breathwork is really fun. Yeah, there we go. Really fun with like a solid pulse, solid beat.
How's that?
That's perfect, Bill. That's perfect. Okay. And so when you're doing breathwork, it can feel almost like a shamanic experience once you bring in the drums and the percussion, because I feel my whole body start to move. And you can do breathwork sitting, and you can sit on a chair, you can sit in a meditation pose, or you can lie down. I actually recommend lying down because it's the safest. If you do get a little lightheaded, you're already lying down. You're very safe. Just be in Shavasana, corpse pose, just lie down comfortably and you'll be fine. So, but I still feel my body kind of move to the beat, and it's you can really move a lot of energy within yourself this way too. So I think this is great. I can definitely happily lead us through a 4/4/4/4/4/4 box breathing count. Okay. And hopefully it'll line up.
Alpha or theta do you want to go?
Let's do alpha. This feels nice and active.
So how's the mix there?
It's great on my end. Yeah.
Okay. And then if I add music to it?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, I'll see you on the other side.
All right, everybody. So let's do this for a couple minutes here. So we're gonna do box breathing, like I just explained what that is. So we already know it's gonna be in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and retain that exhalation for 4. Okay, so let's let all the breath out right now. Breathe it out. 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold that exhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, inhale 2, 3, 4, and hold 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold at the bottom. 2, 3, 4. Let's go again. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. And hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold at the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bring it in again. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. And hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold the exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do some more rounds. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. And hold. Feeling yourself. Feeling different. And exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold that exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 1, 2. Feeling different. 3, 4. And hold. 1, 2. Feeling your body shifting. 3 and 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. And hold. Feeling the sensations in your body, the energy. 4 and inhale. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, 4. Hold that. 2, 3, 4. And then exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold the exhale. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Last round. We're gonna inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold that inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold the exhale. 1. We're gonna do one last round, okay? But we're gonna hold way longer. In for 10. 1, 2, 3. Inhale. 4. Keep inhaling. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hold the inhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Hold at the end. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let go. Start breathing normally. Just stay here in this moment. Notice what your body's feeling like. Notice how the air is moving through your body. Take a moment to just see how you feel now versus how you felt at the beginning. How you felt before the binaural beats started in, before the music. And now you can start to just come back into more waking reality and just see how much of state of consciousness had shifted there. Thank you, Bill, for that beautiful music. And I know I switched up the time to 5/5 or 10/10 at the end there, and threw him off completely. So he did a great job in what's the word? Improvising. Thank you.
No
My
problem,
brain.
man. We're trained professionals. Don't try
Yeah,
this at home.
exactly. Don't try this at home, kids. So normally I should have I should have done there is go to eight, a count of 8 to double it there. But I thought you guys, those of you listening, were ready for a real big test of your breath. And once you start breathing for a consistency, all of a sudden your lungs become supercharged and more powerful. Here in Mexico, I ran into a really interesting individual, a new friend here, and he's getting his diving certificate. Not just diving certificate, but a whole form of deep sea diving training. And the biggest thing that they train you on is breath. And so the main reason he's like, I'm actually less interested in the diving part. I'm more here to learn how to breathe properly. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And these people that train him here are able to get you to hold your breath for over 10 minutes, you can get it to a state where you're using your entire body. Your lungs are not the only thing that retain breath. That's the coolest thing, is we can breathe into so many aspects of our body and move oxygen around our body. It's a skill and a technique that we have lost. And when you think about what you can do with your breath, it's infinite, the things that you can do with it, the purposes for it, and it's this lost technique that's free and accessible to every human being. And it's like learning how to operate your, it's like having a car and not noticing that you have um cruise control, so that when you're on the highway, you can let your foot off the gas and just cruise for a bit. Or it's like realizing you don't even have windshield wipers for the front of your car, and all of a sudden there's all this rain and oh my god, I can see again. Like there's these functions to our machine, our body, that we don't remember, but they're all there. And when we learn how to just do basic things like breathe properly, but also breathe with a certain intention and technique that gets us to a certain place for a particular function or purpose. Oh my gosh, guys, like your life is going to change forever. And it's a beautiful skill and technique. So I'm really glad that we got to explore that today, along with the binaural beats, of course.
I love this. You're reminding me of an experience I had when I was working with an NSA chiropractor. I was the patient, everybody. And the chiropractor, NSA is very different, network spinal analysis, very different from the bone cracking kind of stuff. But he would have me like lying face down on the table. And from time to time, he'd point to a place, like I could feel his a light pressure in a particular spot on my back or legs or whatever. And he'd say, Bill, breathe here. And it's like, it's that simple, right? And I'm like, wow, I can breathe to that spot. I didn't know I could do that. But that intending, I will call it intentional breath, but it's like a focused breath. Sounds very similar to what you're talking about, Chris, with this being able to use our breath specifically.
To target areas, right? So,
Yeah,
you can breathe up into the top of your head. You can, if you have a headache, you can move your oxygen so that it might alleviate some of that stress in your brain. But it's incredible. Stomach aches. What's the term? Like a cramp. What do you
yes,
do sometimes instinctually with a cramp? Is you kind of put your hand on the area, like, ow, and you breathe into it a little bit, like, oh, okay, there it is. You keep breathe into that area in your abdomen or something that's giving you pain, and all of a sudden it's kind of gone, or it's at least alleviated a little bit. We're operating our these machines, these human bodies, with about 5% knowledge of what we can really be doing with it. There's just infinite. The ancients, going back to them, the ancient Egyptians, at some very distant part of their history, they believed that we had 365 senses,
nice.
not five, 365. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I would certainly, based off of their incredible knowledge of other things, I would say it's worth looking into at the very least. And I would say that it's probably more true than it's not, because look at what we're doing now. We're just rediscovering breathing.
Yes.
Breathing, people. Do you
Hello.
see do you see how basic we're back to floppy disks and like 6-bit resolution here. Like this
Yeah.
is this is pretty basic primitive stuff. Just imagine when we actually go into these areas and the depths and the complexity that you can have with just breathing,
Just
with just
breathing.
just breathing.
Yeah. I mean, that's even more basic than binaural beats. Although you mentioned nature earlier. So imagine being in nature where you're surrounded by this healing thing and combining that with breath. Maybe doing the kind of breath, the kind of breath where you put your fingertips on each clavicle, and then as you breathe in, you raise your elbows, and then you breathe out, you lower your elbows. I mean, these are look like funky looking things, but people are using them with amazing results. And hey, it's like you say, Chris, it's free, right? So give it a try. You're not going to hurt yourself.
No, it's just like the common practices. Don't do it driving. Don't do it while like you're in the water, so that you could pass out and drown. Like, let's be smart people. But of
Yep.
course, I trust all of you listening. I know that you're smart. I know that you're capable. And yeah, it's just there's obvious little disclaimers here, but it's very, very safe. This is a great thing to get into, and then that's where you can start to then combine breath with other things, and that's where things get really spicy, really interesting. You start to combine your breath with certain movements, like Bill was just saying, certain pressure points, certain meditation practices. Then you start to use your breath with different visualizations in a meditation that can take you to other stratospheres of consciousness. I mean, It's endless. You can do this for as those in beautiful partnerships, or even on your own. This can move into the tantric, sexual pleasure area too, where you can experience unbelievable physical sensations and pleasure just from enhancing your breath work, maybe with with another individual, with a partner, or by yourself. And you can move this energy, this life force energy inside of ourselves, specifically with breath, but bringing the pleasure senses to a degree you will have never experienced before. And trust me, it's a beautiful, fun practice as well. So there's not just the fun, practical ways to use breath. There's pleasurable, beautiful, like blissful, orgasmic ways to use breath, and beautiful ways to get yourself out of deep depressions and sadness with breath. I mean, like I said, it's infinite. You can use it for anything.
We like to combine it with music because you can teach yourself how to respond to music. You entrain to it basically. So if you do it as a practice, using the same music for the same purpose, with the same binaural beats, whatever, now you're going to love this. But when you teach your body to do that, all you need to do to have that effect is remember the music. And as the music begins to play in your head, guess what happens? You breathe the way you were taught yourself to do, right? The binaural effect comes in, and your brain automatically goes to that brain state without the stimulus. You can just remember it, and it happens to you, which is kind of what you're doing by teaching yourself to breathe, whatever method you're using.
And just imagine that, with I'm thinking like again of Bill's really cool practice that I just think is the coolest thing, like prescribing music for people, going in and to each individual, finding those specific songs that just set you into a different, whatever that might be. You could start bawling your eyes out, or you could just be giggling with joy and laughter, and or just dancing because you can't help yourself. You got to move your body, right? Whatever the effect is, that there's these certain songs. Imagine combining those certain songs with a type of breath work, and maybe even adding those binaurals into that. Like we're talking, this is like a mixed cocktail of some amazing spiritual pina coladas or something here, where you're coming up with some unbelievable experiences that you're going to gift yourself, and like we've been saying, they're all free. this
All
this doesn't
free.
cost you a penny, anyone, so this is accessible for every human on the planet.
Having said
And
that, you'll get to a place where you want to start paying for quality. And it's really worth it, especially
totally.
when you're talking about the musical side of that, because Chris, you have so much free content out there, but your work that you actually do that requires equipment and a place to live and food on the table, like it's worth supporting that. And people are starting to get to the place where like, oh yeah, musicians, right? They do this too. And not only do they do it, but we're discovering we can do it with such power. And whether you call it healing or transformation or changing your brain state, whatever, it's like that's our job as musicians to do that. And we love it and want to keep doing it for you. So the support that comes our way, even it's that little tiny ASCAP check or whatever, somebody buys a track, you keep doing that, everyone, because that's what's advancing this part of the healing world.
It's so appreciated. Thanks for bringing that up, Bill. It's this is the day and age of how you can support the arts. It's beautiful things like I have a Patreon account. People can go and support by giving like $5 a month, $30 a month, and you will get some of the breathworks and other modalities that I've been working on that don't go public. And I have a couple on Patreon, and more coming in 2023 that will only be available. And I know Bill's got other ways that he can mention in a sec that you can support him. I know on Spotify, it's actually, as far as I know, because Spotify is horrible for paying their artists, but they do have a donation function. So all the artists that you do like, if they have a Spotify account, which Bill and myself do, then you can go and find us on Spotify, and you can support and donate through that app as well. They claim, and as far as I know, it's true, that everything you're sending goes to us. Unlike when you play our music, which we still want, please play our music on Spotify, but we get 0.0001 cents
Yeah, yeah.
each time. So it's a little different.
When you think about that, that $30 check that comes once a year, that represents, I don't know how many plays, but it's got to be a
At least
phenomenal amount,
30,000, right? I
you
mean, I
know?
don't know what the math is there, but you got to get a lot of plays to get not a lot of money on Spotify. But that's where we go into these other directions, where we'll just keep creating content because we love it, we enjoy it, and we want to still, shift and change consciousness in the world, and help all of those of you listening in the way that we can as musicians. So we're always going to keep doing it. But if you feel like supporting us or other artists out there, any other musicians, visual artists, creators of all kind, this is how we keep doing it and keep the lights on. So anything you can, any bit of financial energy you want to contribute is always appreciated. So
Definitely.
thank you so much.
Definitely. Yes. I don't know how much more we can say other than thank you at this point, because like learning how to do this, that's the real invitation here. If you want to go out and learn how to put these things to work, do that, right? Because that'll change things for you.
And tell your friends, bring it into what I love to do with and those ladies and guys listening. Sometimes it's nice to go with your fellow, let's call them masculine energies, whether you identify whichever way you want to. Let's say you bring in your masculine energies, and you keep your little brotherhood into a little group of friends, and you go and you just, because there's retreats for men, there's retreats for women. Sometimes it's nice to keep those feminine energies together in a capsule, and the same with the masculine. And you can do this co-ed as well, breathwork groups as well. Those are really fun. But there's a special bond that I find can really happen when you bring your buddies out and you all just start breathing together, and you become that coherent. There's a coherence that and a bond that happens, and honestly, you get way higher. The effects of breathwork, I find, are increased in like exponentially when you're with other people. So bring your friends into it, guys, gals, whatever it is, and have a nice little group of that, and it becomes a fun activity to bring into a typical hangout. Instead of just going to the beach and catching some sun, go to the beach, catch sun, and do some breath work.
Yeah, I mean, as much as like we'd like to help, you guys already know how to do this.
Yeah.
Find some tunes so you can count it out, and you'll get entrained to a place where you don't have to count anymore. And it doesn't take a whole lot to do that. Even on a phone these days, they're decent enough for doing this kind of work. If you're at the beach, grab a little Bluetooth speaker or something, and just go for it. You'll let us know, because it's exciting to be in this world of change and transformation and support for people who are doing that work.
There's just so much out there now. There's another really good app for breathwork called Othership.
Oh, yeah.
Othership, I believe, comes out of Toronto, Canada, to my old hometown, and it's really good. And now you do have to pay for it, and I really think it's worth it, because the quality of the music, for the most part, all the ones that I've heard, the music is awesome. And also the quality of the practitioners that are leading it are fantastic. And yours truly here might end up getting on that app, because I'm working with some individuals back in Vancouver who have connections to that app, and some of my collaborations might get on that app anyway. But more importantly, it's just really good, because I find I start rocking out to these things, and this is where your body can really get into, and you're half dancing, half breathing, and that's a really cool experience in of itself. So have some fun with it. Enjoy.
And thank you all for listening to this little experiment.
Yeah.
Always grateful for your attendance, and especially at this time of year, which will be New Year when this comes out. The best wishes for a happy 2023.
Happy 2023, everyone. May it bring you abundance, joy, and all of the emotions and energies that you need. And just lots of love coming from us here at the Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness. We love doing this, and we really appreciate you guys listening. So all the best for 2023.
Oh, brother.
Oh.
Thank you for listening in on our conversation, and for taking time to show your appreciation with a like, share, or subscribe. Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness is a practice of spontaneity, and we welcome your comments, ideas, and questions. There are ways to connect with us in the show notes, so let us hear from you. Until next time, this is Bill Protzman along with Chris Noble, wishing you great musical health. Samara Huchaya.